without storytelling, we are likely not to know who we are. We are likely not to know where we've been, why we are here, let alone where we are going. What might be in doubt sometimes will be whose stories we are telling to ourselves and to others at any time.
Speak English and Ga.
English, Ewe, Chi, and Ga.
English and Ga.
English, Chi, Ga, and Fra.
We are one. We cannot be.
The languages I used mostly in the class are Ga, Chi, English, and Fancy. But majority, the language we use is English. Yeah, we use English more than any other language.
We have a program now which is called the Integrated Approach to Teaching. This actually takes cognizance of the fact that the children do better in other people's language, like the English, when they are proficient in their own language.
Our readers were mostly in English. Yeah, but then the Ghanaian educational system, you learn a local language. Yeah, so with learning a Ghanaian language, you use books written in Chi.
The teachers taught in English all the time, and with the local language, you can't be caught speaking the vernacular because you will be punished. You have to speak English.
English has been like our mother tongue. It's the first thing everybody wants to learn. It is important because it's used as a medium of teaching in the classroom, not only the classroom. Wherever you get to in Ghana, if you speak English, you are respected.
Most of the students here normally speak their local language, that's the Ga, because they are not really fluent in the English language. So we're trying our best to help them improve the English language. So most of our storybooks here are English storybooks.
All our textbooks are written in English. The disadvantage of the textbook sometimes is, the meaning of words. We should get, a glossary that would explain all the meaning of the words at the end, but in the textbooks mainly, we don't have meaning of words in them.
Most of the books in this library are written in English. So when we read the story to them, we try to compare some of the things that are not common here. Then we exchange it with things that are common here. We have just a few books that are written in Twi and in Ga. The children are able to relate to them. But the foreign ones, that is what they are not really able to relate with them.
It's important for us to keep in mind that language is the primary vehicle of stories. One major advantage of telling stories in the language you know best, your first language, your mother tongue, is that many of the nuances that make storytelling a compelling art form come in naturally when you are using the language that you know best.
The Ghanaian child accesses most of the stories from the home. Yeah, most. If I say most, I'm not talking about the English stories. I'm talking about the Ghanaian stories.
Anansi and the wisdom pot. A very long time ago, Nyami, the sky god, gave Anansi all the wisdom in the world in a huge pot. It tells us that children can give advice to the adults, and adults can also give advice to the children.
They will be told the Ghanaian stories at home, and then when they come to school, we will tell them different stories. Stories about our former presidents, stories about, maybe Cinderella.
My favorite story is Beauty and the Beast.
Alice in Wonderland.
Three Blind Mice.
The Three Thieves in the Mortuary.
When we were growing up, it was all English. Picture books, probably things like The Pied Piper of Hamlet, Rapunzel, and you read the fairy tales and all that kind of stuff. That was what I read growing up.
Of course, I found it weird even at the time, that you would see characters you can't really connect to.
Because I could relate to them on some levels, but then on others I just didn't understand.
Talking about characters who live somewhere where there's snow, they eat apples, but those are good things, but we don't talk about them here.
Like I never read a book and was like, okay, so she's dark-skinned like me, or she has hair like mine, or she thinks the way I think, or she has family the way I have family. And so it was always, I wondered whether I didn't think I had the right to be in a story kind of thing, but then you had to put yourself in their place anyway, because when you're a kid, you want to imagine yourself going on all these adventures and doing all these great things, even though the characters aren't necessarily like direct parallels of who you are when you're growing up.
It is important that as a young and growing child, you are introduced to the world, the universe around you, through the images that populate your own world, that you recognize yourself in those images. Otherwise, a dangerous process begins.
Some of the stories they tell are their own stories. And some of the stories are stories that are told them by their grandmothers or their relatives.
Some of them are taking stories from what has been written and telling them in the oral form. So there are some children who are telling versions of European stories, so of a Ghanaian version of Cinderella or something like that.
Pinocchio, I love that story. I really love. I read it over and over again, and at a time all my stories were like Pinocchio. There you find I tried going into this magic realism, and a fairy would come and then make someone a puppet or something. My stories were going in that direction until it got to a time I realized there are no fairies in Ghana. We have witches and demons over here, and I had to start chipping in a few of African stuff to make my story more interesting to my audience. Yeah.
Every human being has built into her consciousness a fascination with things from some other world. And that fascination is coming out of the fact that they look so much unlike what is in your own world.
Maybe Alice in Wonderland, because it was so crazy. I just loved it because it was crazy, and I didn't have to worry about the reality of the character, because the reality she was existing in was so different from anybody's reality that really it was outside of the realm of like normalcy. So I didn't have to think, oh, but where I am, this doesn't happen. I just knew this happens nowhere. So just reading that and going along in the fantasy of the thing, I think was amazing for me as a kid.
I would say that there isn't enough room for creative subjects in the curriculum. We're very fixated on passing examinations. We're very fixated on getting the facts right. And so we're, science and math and so on and so forth. And I'm very fixated on getting our grammar right and so on, but not enough room for kids to be creative.
When you want to see creativity in our children, you, the teacher, just lead the class. Then
kid, your thinking, I think, is the most free that it will ever be.
I speak a word at home. I speak English in the school. I like to read books to learn new words. And when I finish reading if I learn the word, then I'll put it in my brain. When I go, then I'll go and search for the meaning in the dictionary, so that I can use it to be talking to friends in English. I like reading English, and I wish I had books in Europe, so that I could try and read it.
When I am writing a story and it's in English, and then I decide to infuse a little bit of my local language, where I feel excited, and then I feel it's something new I'm doing, something that is not too common in the system.
Although the first two creative pieces I had published were in Ebe, after that, somehow I fell into the same trap through my education, that the language you do your creative writing in must be what? English.
I think I know people who would want to be more literary in their local language, but it's not really encouraged. At some point you just drop your local language, and then it's like the normal proficiency is okay. So I think it should be a matter of choice, and then people should be able to pursue that if they want to.
Being bilingual or multilingual, it helps a lot in the creative process. Sometimes there are things you would like to express, but you can't write them down in the English language. You feel it is best written in your local language.
But then beyond even just language is an indication of culture and of your cultural grounding. I think everybody, when you write a story, there are bits and pieces of your culture that come through, even when you don't try to make them come forward.
When you devalue language, you devalue yourself. You lose a sense of what? Not only being, but also your sense of direction. In other ways, it is also possible for the new language that you take on to first unmake you and remake you in the image of some other culture, in the image of some other person. There are many stories waiting to be told. Any one of us can only tell a few and hope that the rest will be told by others. But it is important for us as teachers, as parents, to make sure we give our children the opportunity to hear our stories.